The world's biggest serial killer might never have been caught if he knew how to use a computer. Imagine a guy who's not just a serial killer, but also a friend of his victims, a well-known figure in town, and a doctor on top of that. This is the mind-blowing story of Dr. Harold Shipman, who used his clinic not to save lives, but to take them. In a small town in England called Hyde, where only 30,000 people live, he carried out serial killings right under everyone's noses for 23 years, putting more than 250 people to their deaths. No one suspected Dr. Harold Shipman, and maybe they never would have if he hadn't made one small mistake. What was the reason behind his killings? How did he manage to avoid getting caught for so long? What clue did the police find that exposed years of murder in an instant? Welcome back to Amazing Videos of Beyond the Facts. Dr. Harold Shipman used to run his clinic in a small town Hyde in England. The total population of this town was 30,000, and he had 3,000 patients. He mainly targeted patients who lived alone and were quite old, so that no one would raise an eyebrow at their deaths. He spends a lot of time visiting their homes, listening to their worries, and making them feel like, even though they're alone, Dr. Shipman is there to hear them out. Some patients trust Doctor so much that they've even given him the keys to their houses. Because of this attitude, he's become quite popular in Hyde. People think Dr. Shapman only treats the elderly by just talking with them, but beneath all that, he figures out at what time they are alone and how much wealth they have, who comes to the house, and where do their relatives live. Once Dr. Shapman felt it was all good, he give his patients an overdose of medicine and kill them. Since these patients were usually over 80 years old, no one suspected anything when they died. This went on for many years without him getting caught, and no one even thought to question him until he made a mistake himself. Dr. Shipman started his career in a town called Pontefract, where he worked at a hospital. Then, in 1974, he moved to Todmorden and started working as a general practitioner at the Abraham Marudnod Medical Center. During his time there, he prescribed a lot of patients a higher quantity of Pathioon, which is actually a painkiller, but a pretty addictive one. Dr. Shipman had a habit of getting high on Pathioon and would intentionally prescribe this medicine to his patients even when they didn't really need it. What happened was that the patients felt really good after taking it, not realizing they were getting hooked. That's why patients were drawn to Shipman despite not wanting to be. After getting caught, the hospital administration fired Dr. Shipman, and it escalated to the point of his license being revoked. However, Shipman managed to prevent his license from getting canceled and was sent to rehab. After spending a little time in rehab, and once everyone forgot about him, he came to Hyde in 1977, where he started working as a general practitioner at Donnybrook Medical Center. By 1980, he continued practicing as a GP, and during all this time, he neither quit drugs nor stopped finding opportunities to prey on elderly patients. The murder rate shot up a lot since 1993, when he opened his own clinic in Hyde and built a solid reputation in the city. For years, things went on like this, and nobody suspected the doctor of anything shady. It wasn't until March 1998 that Dr. Linda Reynolds, who worked at a hospital called Brook Surgery right across from Shipman's clinic, raised concerns about the unusually high death rate among patients from Shipman's clinic. She pointed out that in just the last 3 months, 16 of his patients had died, while Brook Clinic, who has 3 times more patients at clinic than the Shipmans, only had 14 patients died. This raised more suspicion when it was found out that after the deaths of all 16 patients, they weren't buried, but instead cremated. Dr. Linda expressed her concerns in a report to the coroner in Manchester, detailing all of this. It was also mentioned that most of Dr. Shipman's patients were elderly women who were found dead in their homes. It can't just be a coincidence that most of these patients died while Dr. Shipman was around. What's strange is that these patients were found dead sitting in chairs, dressed nicely. Plus, either Dr. Shipman was already at their homes or it was his first visit, and he found them dead, which is definitely not normal. An investigation was launched based on this report, but the police didn't find any solid evidence against Dr. Shipman, and after a month, they closed the investigation. When Dr. Shipman patients died, he would just sign Form B himself. Form B is the one the treating doctor has to sign, stating the cause of the patient's death. But the issue was that Form C, which another doctor has to sign, was usually signed by Dr. Shipman's buddy doctors or those who didn't suspect anything. This way, Shipman was faking his patients' death certificates. After that investigation, he killed 3 more people. But he was about to get caught. Shipman's last target was former mayor of Hyde, Kathleen Grundy, who was 81, who died on the 24th of June, 1998, in his house, and Shipman was the last man who saw her alive. He also signed the death certificate, and the cause of death he mentioned was old age. Angela Woodruff, Kathleen's daughter and a lawyer herself, got suspicious about her mother's mysterious death when she found a will in which her mother had left her house to Dr. Shipman. Shipman was quite close to the family, but that didn't raise any red flags. Angela's real concern was that her mother owned 2 houses, yet the will only mentioned 1. This made it clear that the will had to have been written by someone who didn't know about the other house. And that was Shipman. Angela Woodruff went to the police, who reopened the investigation. Kathleen Grundy's body was exhumed and sent for an autopsy. It turned out there were a lot of traces of diamorphine, which is heroin, in her body. When the police asked Dr. Shipman about it, he claimed that Grundy was a heroin user and that he had noted this in his computer before treating her. Dr. Shipman had recently started entering records into a computerized medical journal, but he didn't realize that while he had entered a date before the death in that entry, but the last edit date for that file on the computer gets saved automatically. When the police checked the entries on that computer, they found out that this entry was saved after the death of Kathleen, but this evidence was not enough for arresting Shipman. Police also discovered a typewriter which was used to write the fake will. This became clear because some characters on Shipman's typewriter were damaged, and the exact same characters were missing in Grundy's will. On September 7, 1998, the police arrested Hyde's well-known doctor, Harold Shipman. When this information came to light, the people whose loved ones had been killed by Shipman also stepped forward. They had their suspicions before, but couldn't speak up in front of the well-known doctor in town. The police also investigated 15 other patients who had recently died at the hands of the Shipman. In all these cases, a specific pattern was noticed where the patients were given a lethal dose of diamorphine, and Shipman would sign their death certificates and write old age as the cause of death. He even recommended cremation himself so that all the evidence would be destroyed after the bodies were burned. During the Shipman's inquiry, the team took another look at all the cases of patients who died under Shipman's care. They investigated all the death certificates and medical records handled by Shipman. Additionally, they interviewed the families of those whose relatives were Shipman patients, and some bodies were exhumed for forensic autopsies. This process was really detailed, and it turned out that Shipman had killed a total of 218 patients from 1975 until being caught. That's the confirmed number, but in many cases, they couldn't confirm due to a lack of evidence. It's estimated that the number could go up to 260. The court sentenced him to death for 15 times, but in 2004, he hanged himself in jail using bed sheets. After his death, his cellmate revealed something shocking. He had actually killed 508 people, and the Shipman had told him this himself. However, the real reason behind so many murders by Shipman hasn't come to light yet. Some people call him a psycho, others think it was a way to make money, and some believe it might be linked to the death of the Shipman's mother. His mom, who was a cancer patient, was given morphine as a painkiller. Experts believe that maybe Shipman wanted to see his patients die in the same way with morphine. I hope you all will like and share this video from Beyond the Facts. Thank you so much for your love-filled comments. See you in the next awesome video.